Today, let's talk about the subject of architecture and worship. Now, you may be saying to yourself, that seems kind of a far stretch for a course in worship leading to talk about architecture, but the truth is, every space that's been intentionally designed in any way has some theological implications. They say things about God and about relation to people and the financial priorities of the institution and the nature of worship and what kind of relationship these people have with God. All of those are implied by absolutely every space design, including things like banks and grocery stores. A piece of architecture is really a work of art, even if it looks like it's purely functional. Somebody spent a lot of time drawing, and somebody spent some time conceptualizing how this space was going to be used. So you design a bank to welcome people in and build trust. Everything about the architecture says we are a secure place. A grocery store, it's not about security, but it's about we have the freshest and the newest, and we have plenty of it, and you're welcome to come here. Likewise, we could think about fast food restaurants versus sit-down restaurants. And a fast food restaurant has a lot of red and a lot of yellow and a lot of plastic. And the red says, I'm hungry, and the yellow says, I'm in a hurry, and the plastic says, I am going to sit here for 15 minutes and then I'm going to leave. The lighting tends to be more like very bright lighting, and the temperature tends to be cold. And that makes me eat fast because I don't want my food to get cold. They're not being unfriendly. They just want you to eat your food and then get out. On the other hand, there are sit-down restaurants where they want you to be there and have dessert and have a long conversation and spend your money while you're there. So they have darker, more intimate kind of setting. They have warmer temperature, softer seat surfaces. You communicate a lot by the way that you design your space. Here's a church that was built in the 1960s. It was an established church. Everybody in the 1960s knew what a church building should be like. And so this was cutting edge, kind of on the fancy side for an evangelical church. It said worship. Take a look at where your eyes are drawn. They're drawn upward. You see the pulpit, and you see the baptistry, and you see a place for a choir, and there's a prominent organ there. And we're sitting in pews. Surfaces are rather sterile and yet welcoming, not exactly warm. Well, that's how our relationship was with God 50 years ago. Since that time, that preacher has retired and moved on, and a new preacher has come, and a whole new eldership and another generation has risen up, and this building has become something of an albatross for them because they've become much more of a seeker-oriented church, much more contemporary. Well, you can't really do contemporary worship in this building very easily. Most of our churches, evangelical-oriented churches, the depth of our theology in space design is how many square feet can I get per dollar? I want it to look nice. I want it to be welcoming. But it needs to be cheap. We aren't going to go with stained glass windows or any of those fancy things. All of that, even that choice says something about God, about the relationships of people, about our financial priorities, about the nature of worship, and about what kind of relationship these people have with God. Now, here's a picture of the Hagia Sophia, one of the earliest church buildings that's still standing. Justinian, the Roman emperor, built this in Constantinople. Take a look at the space on the inside. Well, what does this say about God and about the relationships of people and about the financial priorities of this church and about the nature of worship and about the kind of relationship that these people have with God? In about 1,600 years, this building has stood. It also went through a change. Muslims came and conquered Constantinople, and Turkey is now a strongly Islamic nation. So what do you do with that building to make it into a mosque? There were a lot of difficulties in that, lots of icons and images, and to Muslims, that's offensive. Well, let's look at an early synagogue. You see the west wall there has a niche for the Torah. You notice that the walls are covered with icons. This is a synagogue. Huh. And take a look at the floor plan here. People come in. There are several rooms for small group instruction. Now here is a house church Christian house church in that same area, built around the same time. And you notice instead of an ark for the Torah, what they have is a niche for the baptistry. And they also have icons and the same sort of colors and same sort of images on the walls. Well, here is the floor plan, the courtyard, and then there are some individual classes where I guess in effect you have Sunday school, place for baptisms, place for the regular worship meeting. Let us move on to Old St. Peter's Basilica. About 100 years after that, a lot of older churches, they're built with a rather impressive set of stairs on the way up. Well, the temple was designed that way. In fact, as you read the Psalms, you see that more than once it says, let us go up to the house of the Lord. We are of the earth and we're going up into the heavenlies. And when we get there, take a look at where the eye is drawn to the back of the room where the arch is and upward to see the windows and the indirect light coming in. You can see how small people are. We'll make a little comparison to contemporary church. This is obviously a more contemporary church, so we are assuming contemporary music. Look at the pulpit. The pulpit is not very imposing compared to other pulpits. The stage is taken up with monitors and with instruments and with people up there, and they're dressed casually. So there is a sense of egalitarianism here in this church, that people are more equal than in the Roman Catholic Church. At the same time, there still is a stage, largely just so people can see the instrumentalists, but that's making a statement in and of itself, isn't it? And the fact that there's a sort of invisible line that the audience isn't on the stage. Well, all of those are theological implications. We'll compare that to a place like this. Where's the eye drawn here? Yeah, how big do you feel in this building? What does this say about our financial priorities, about our view of God, our view of relationships with each other, our relationship with God? On the other hand, we get to Salvation Army. Very simple aesthetic. We see men and women separated. We see that they believe in prayer and spiritual exercises. They have these modesty curtains there. They've got a pulpit there. They're not a high church by any means because they've got this portrait of Jesus. Jesus in the window. They also are dressed rather formally in military outfits. And men and women are separated even at the altar. Very plain, very simple altar bench. What does all that say about their financial priorities, about their relationship with God, about their relationship with each other? Huge implications just in seeing this one picture of how they've designed their space. Let's go back to the temple, Herod's temple at the time of Jesus. What do you notice about this? Let me point out that to begin with, we notice there are very imposing walls. So then you have this large courtyard on the outside, and that would be the courtyard of Gentiles. Then you go through another wall, another gate, and you get into the court of women. And then you go through another gate, and you have the court of men, and through the next door, and that's the holy place, then the most holy place. So most of the construction of Solomon's temple has to do with walls. The real focus of attention is a place that nobody's allowed to go. Here is a picture of Solomon's temple. Not as imposing, not as large, but there's a lot of brass. There's a lot of gold. There's a lot of cut stone. You come in there, that says something about God. It says something about our financial priorities. It says something about our relationship with one another and our relationship with God, doesn't it? Again, back in contrast, what does this say about our relationship with one another, about our relationship with God, about our financial priorities, about where our eye is drawn? Here is a picture from Willow Creek. In their choice of how to crop the picture even, there isn't that sense of height that we saw in some of those church buildings where it's 60 or more feet high and your eye is just immediately drawn upward. Here, the eye is drawn to people. There's theater seating, they're semi in the round, there's a stage, it's all very secular looking, there are no icons, no stained glass windows. Any Joe, unchurched, non-believer would be pretty comfortable coming. That says something about the relationship of people with one another, about their priorities for finances, and about people's relationship with God.